All right. So, I was thinking on Instagram, I've been building some Spider-Man stuff lately, like a bunch of it. And I thought it might be cool to do a video on that. I know that I haven't posted like any of the other Western characters. I've just done those first 5. I just haven't had a lot of time, you know? I don't know why I've just decided that this bookshelf is going to be here. Originally, it's just to block the stuff behind it, you know? But now I have no interest in those little Funkos. I picked them up specifically just to throw on this bookshelf. And then I have all the little comic books from the comic book wave. Because even though I was only interested in like 2 of those figures, I still ended up getting all of them over time. So, and I think there's potential in those little plastic books. I don't like that they're taking up the space of a whole nother accessory in that wave, but I know there's a slew of creators that just make like stickers for existing products. So I would love to see somebody just like cast one of those comic books and then just print out like 1,000,000 stickers. It's like, yeah, buy this sticker set and it comes with these books, and sticker them and put them on your little bookshelf. That'd be cool. I've had the argument, it's like, oh, well, they could just do paper. Paper will wear down. Paper will rip up and disappear. I don't really like that as much as these little plastic books, so. But if they're going to do it, just throw it in as an extra. It doesn't need to be anything else. Yeah, but so this Spider-Man, how I got here is an interesting story. So 6 to 8 months ago, you know, somewhere around there, you know, I got invited to do the Legendary Secret Swap. And it's like my first event in a long time. Way back when I first started, I entered one of the Figure Realm little contest things. But it was like one of the last ones. Like, I entered it, and I did, I don't know, okay. I was near the bottom of the list, frankly. But then they never announced another one. I was like, well, I'll do better next time. Yeah, they never announced another one. I was never part of anything else. But the Secret Swap isn't even like it's not like a graded thing. It's not a, hey, first, second, and third place. It's just you trade figures and people link you, and hopefully, you know, you're sharing like followers around, you know. But it was my first event, so they were like, well, you know, anyone from beginner to expert could be in here. You don't really know, so, you know, make sure you have this many of this kind of character on a list. You know, and they had all these like categories and criteria. So I tried to keep it really simple. All of my characters were humanoid. All of my characters were really easy to make, and all of them were characters that I was like, well, now I want to make these. You know, because if I want something, I just make it myself. Yeah, so I had put a World War II Captain America on the list, and I didn't know that I was allowed to specify what body, because I had this idea around the time I made the list. I thought it would be cool for like a series of superhero characters from like Marvel or DC, but on classified bodies, because I already use a lot of classified bodies for customs. I like the real clothing, you know, look on them. Their articulation is frankly better than Marvel Legends and anything else, especially since you can go in and you can fix the rockers pretty easily, and then you get more bend out of them than you can get out of most Marvel Legends. But so I made this Captain America. I still haven't found a triangle shield for him, but honestly, I kind of like the broken one on him. But yeah, I had a whole slew of characters that I was planning. In fact, I've got like Noir sitting over here still, because I still haven't finished him. And when he is finished, I'm just gonna sell him because he's taller than Captain America, and I don't like that. But I made this one first because I put Captain America on the list, right? He's on the list, and so now I wasn't allowed to make him until I figured out what my secret swap was, right? Luckily, they didn't make me a Captain America. You know, so I was able to go back in, and I had the pieces just laying there, taunting me for months. So I made Captain America. And I had other characters. A lot of them were like, because the idea is classified because they're wearing like things that look like actual pants and boots and shirts, and they have all the wrinkles and all the textures. So those kinds of characters would work on classified bodies. So World War II Captain America, you know, Gotham by Gaslight Batman, Spider-Man Noir, stuff like that. Well, after Noir fell. After I made this Captain America, I was like, you know what? Because I had to take some liberties. He's using, I'm not taking the coat off, but he's actually got, like armored bits here on his arm too. The upper body that I used was, I don't remember his name. The G.I. Joe characters have weird names, but it was that rock climber guy, because he had a white outback torso, so it's wider, it's bulkier, and it was white, so I didn't want to have to come in here and paint the white of the stripes. And and I kept the arms, and the arms had these like leather ends to the sleeves that looked like armor pads, so I went ahead and painted those in brown and red too. Then I went ahead and I was like, well, World War II, they used trench coats. Why not throw a character, throw a trench coat on a character? So, yeah, but then I was thinking, I was like, you know, I could probably do other Marvel characters, you know, in like a G.I. Joe scale. So I was looking around, and I had, because I have Tom Holland, and I had Andrew Garfield. I no longer have Tobey Maguire. So the 3 Spider-Man collection was not complete. So I was like, I can use Andrew Garfield. Like I have all the accessories for my Tobey Maguire one. Like I have his heads and I have his hands, and all I would really need is to go on eBay and buy a new body. But I just haven't done it. But I have, yeah, so Spider-Man, originally it was just straight up an Andrew Garfield Spider-Man. I had saved some starting lineup hands so that I could have like the skin hands with the Andrew Garfield face. I actually have a whole thing here of accessories. Yeah, so the starting lineup hands, which are just these like splayed out hands. And these hands, the way they're shaped, are exactly the way Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man kept his hands out. Like in this very specific shape here. But only one size of starting lineup fits him, and it has to be this very specific. It comes from this guy. I'm not a sports fan. I have these sitting here because I'm gonna make a comment at some point about the new Gambit figure. Yeah, but so I have, I have the initial Andrew Garfield. He's got something on him. Andrew Garfield head, and then I got another Andrew Garfield head, and I ripped the hair off and I flattened out the hair. Needs repainted on the tips. But But this is for, you know, the hood to go on him. So this is specifically meant for the hood, because with the hood just sticks way off his head with the big hair. So, and of course the hood's not going to sit right now, but it's just going to look stupid. You know, I've got a backpack and stuff. I have a whole bunch of stuff in here. All of it has explanations, so we'll set that to the side. In fact, I'm not just gonna leave one glove on him. Let's just take that off too. Yeah, but I really liked Andrew Garfield as Spider-Man, and so I pulled the figure out, right? Because I was like, well, if he looks like he's, you know, the clothing is the style of the 40s, you know, and if we said Spider-Man was a modern character, I know he was made in the 60s, but if we said that he was a modern character, then this could very well be what the costume looks like had it been made. I haven't mentioned the jacket. So this is where the evolution started to happen, right? Because I pulled Andrew Garfield out to go with this Captain America, right? This Captain America, probably not even in this set anymore, because I'm trying not to do too many big superheroes, right? If he is in the set, he's in the Spider-Man section, not the other section. Yeah, so I was like, well, cloth goods I got for Captain America, I should get some for Spider-Man. I had initially planned a GPS slot on eBay is my go-to for fabric. If they don't have what I need, I make it myself, but I don't, like, I can't, like, I can sew, but I can't sew so small that it looks good on an action figure. And I have a sewing machine. I have no idea how to use it, and I haven't bothered to learn. Eventually, maybe. But when I have to make my own fabric stuff, it's normally, you know, hot glue or tacky glue and fabric, and, you know, I just get it to look okay. But I had one of these jackets already on one of my personal characters. And I was like, I remember Andrew Garfield wearing a lot of green. Right, GPS Lot didn't have the set I wanted. They used to have the scarf and the puffer vest and the hat that he wears in the second movie. They didn't have that. I was like, I remember him wearing a lot of green, so I grabbed the green jacket off of my other character to try on him. I've since bought a second one to put back on my other character. And it hit me that because this Andrew Garfield, because the face sculpt is made based on the No Way Home movie, that he looks sad. And I put him in a green coat, and I was like, oh no. Did I just make a mourning Spider-Man who misses Gwen Stacy so much that he's wearing a green coat? Yes, I did, and now that's the whole thing. That is absolutely what I've done. And so then it grew from there, right? Like, originally this was just going to go in a set with that Captain America, and I was thinking about making some other characters that were going to be like G.I. Joe adjacent, right? And the whole time I was like, well, I'm going to get that Fantastic Four, and they're already themed off the 60s. It's going to be great. Which I have done. In fact, this blue thing you see over here, we'll get there. But then I had the idea of the Exiles. So in the comics, the Exiles, normally they're mostly like an X-Men related team, but they're essentially what the MCU did with What If. So it's a team of characters from different universes, and they're fighting like inter-universal monsters, right? And I was like, Andrew Garfield, well, first off, Andrew Garfield could just come back into the universe as, a What If character, right? That could happen at any point. You could do that whenever you want, Marvel. You've already brought it back into the multiverse. So, yeah, so then going forward, it was Exiles. And I was like, okay, well, I don't want any other main characters. Like, I don't want my Exiles to just basically be the Avengers, right? I wanted, like, secondary and tertiary characters to fill out this roster. Now, first off, Exiles has just about always had the same leader, and she's not done. She's not done at all. And I haven't filled out the whole roster even, because I haven't figured out who all I want. But I'm using these parts to make a Blink, right? Blink has always been the leader of the Exiles. And she's just, that's kind of been one of her major roles. That's how they've kept her relevant over the last couple of decades. So I thought this body, this mix of parts would work well. I know more recently she's also wearing a jacket, so I could absolutely get her a jacket. Because, can't not make characters better with a jacket, I guess. And I made, one of the first characters I made was Namor. So Namor is one of my favorite characters. The movies absolutely butchered him. And so I was like, I'll make an MCU adjacent Namor where he's actually Namor. So I made a Namor and put him on there as like the powerhouse. And the only other character that I've decided on, who I only just finished, kind of. I might go back in and do some more, I don't know. Finished for me is very speculative. Is Nova. And I chose Nova for a very specific reason. One, I had the Icarus body. Two, I had the Cobra Commander. And I realized, hey, I could probably mix those together. And then I realized that I could make a Nova out of it. I chose Nova because Nova is one of those characters, and this has precedence in my own stuff, but Nova's one of those characters that, like, he's been rumored 5 or 6 times in the MCU. Like, strong rumors. Like they were going to bring him in, there was, like, specific actors involved, and then they just never did. They still haven't brought Nova into the MCU. And so I thought it would be a fun nod, just like they did in Deadpool 3, when they brought in Gambit, because the whole joke was that they were going to do a Gambit movie, but never did. So I thought it would be cool to do Nova, and I went through my bin for, random actor heads that are, like, a lot of them related to either Star Wars or Marvel, and I was like, who do I have who would be, like, sort of believable that they would cast for Nova? And I have a Cassian Andor head, so I put that on him, and that's really cool. I actually really like that, and he's not a bad actor. I don't know if he's, like, good for that role, but I have that head, so I did that. And then this is not his Exiles look either, because I have alternate parts for my Spider-Man specifically for Exiles. Because the idea is, if this is a more depressed, more hands-on, beat-em-up Spider-Man, then what you're going to end up with is essentially what happens in, Now, this one's a little more complicated. Like in the last big Spider-Verse event, like Peter was there, but he was run so ragged that his costume and everything was getting destroyed. And I thought that would be cool to replicate here. Luckily, the mushroom pegs in the arms are so easy to pop out on this figure. I actually have alternate arm. I have the other alternate arm and leg too. They don't have bandages on them. I'm going to do something else with them, which I can bring up here in a little bit. But oh man, before I pop this leg on, I should have done the, because he's got, let's see here, there it is. Yeah, I got him a belt and everything. And I have a bit of stretchy fabric here on the belt so that I can stretch it over his hip and it closes itself back up on his waist, which is really cool. And also, it's convenient. I actually ended up breaking this this Spider-Man at one point, and when I went to fix the ball joint, I took out the drop down because drop downs suck and I hate them. But it made his hips way stronger, and I can just pop his legs on whenever I want, just back and forth. Yeah, and that's what the backpack is for. So I have this really bedraggled looking Andrew Garfield Spider-Man who's just been through the ringer, the absolute ringer, who has essentially just left his own universe to be here with the Exiles. And I think that is a super cool concept for him. Now, I've thought about hit the camera. Yeah, now I have thought about doing some other stuff with him, because if Marvel ever went this direction, they could pull from some other Spider-Men, like not Peter Parker, but like there was a time, right, where in the comics Spider-Man had the organic webbing and then he had his stingers. Now, Peter doesn't have those anymore, but Kane does. And so I've thought about giving him those stingers. That would be super cool. Now, currently, the main head I'm using is, this is a Superior Spider-Man head. I threw some wash on the head to make it darker. It matches up with the red better. I've tried some other ones. I have this Ditko-inspired head, too, that's a little more metallic to try to match that metallic color. It doesn't really match. It kind of is okay. But I got this reflective, like, sticker material to put in the eyes, which is really cool. I super glued that in there. You know, I've got that maximum web shield. I have, you know, because you can use those maximum effects for, like, literally any character. You know, some people complained about the price. It's like you're buying Spider-Man and an accessory kit, so you don't even have to use them on the maximum. Yeah, and there's just a bunch of random stuff in here, like he's got. So this hand, no, it's not that hand. It's not that hand either. Dang it! I have a ton of accessories in here. No, but because I use the starting lineup hands for him, I have a bunch of them laying around, but I have the hands like with the basketball. Yeah, there it is. So this hand has a magnet in it. This is the one from the basketball. I cut it off of the basketball so that I had two of these splayed out open hands. And I put a magnet in the basketball too, so that I can magnetize it there. And I actually... I have a Thing figure because I got the Fantastic Four, like I said. I put a magnet in his hand, and he can hold this basketball now too, which is pretty cool. Yeah, but I have some symbiote effects in here because I'm gonna go a little bit of like a Spider Carnage route, and the reason for that, and that doesn't mean that makes this character even like madder or sadder or anything. Originally in the comics, Carnage was not a bad symbiote. It was warped by Cletus Cassidy. And it's the same with the Venom symbiote, actually, too. They retconned it so that Spider-Man, like, felt more angry and stuff like that. That was never part of the original story. Never. Originally, what it culminated to is... because they changed the costume to the black costume. And people liked the new costume, but they wanted the red and blue back. So they had to write in a reason to get rid of the black costume. Well, they made it a living alien. And Spider-Man essentially went, ew, get it off. And so ever since then, Venom has hated Spider-Man for rebuffing him, basically. Like, there was never any ill effects. That's all been retconned in. That wasn't part of the original story. It was literally just a story to get rid of the black costume. And they like, people still liked the black costume, so Black Cat gifted him a new black costume that was just a fabric one, so that Spider-Man could switch back and forth. Even though they had already basically set up the idea that the symbiote could camouflage and shift and possibly even change colors, so the symbiote could have just made itself red and blue if it wanted to. So that's the route here, is that the Carnage symbiote is... I'm using it because it's already red. It's good shorthand, right? For the red and blue costume not changing. It's good shorthand for, like, the idea of Spider Carnage, but it doesn't make him crazy. It's just like a secondary, thing. That way you can still do, in the MCU, you would still be able to do, Venom and Carnage and do it the way people expect it to be done. Let's move Blink and Nova. But as I was doing the Exiles, and I started, like, planning out what this Spider-Man's world would look like, I was like, dang it, now I want to do that Spider-Man's world. And so I took some of the voice lines from Andrew Garfield, right? In No Way Home. He explains that he got bitter, that he got angry, that he stopped pulling his punches. He doesn't mention any other supervillains either. Like, when they're talking about how they fought aliens and stuff, he's like, the craziest thing I fought was, like, a guy in a robot rhino suit. So he hasn't even had any, like, new villains. So who's he beating up? He's just going out and beating up street thugs, right? Now, if you take that to its limit, then the idea would be, hey, we could probably do a darker series with Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man, similar to, like, the Netflix Daredevil, where he's just going out and beating on random thugs, and then the thugs are trying to, like, coalesce their forces to take down Spider-Man. Which means that I get to pull from all of the random gangsters that never get the light of day in a movie, right? So, obviously, we get to keep D'Onofrio's Kingpin, because he's a great Kingpin. But we get to keep D'Onofrio's Kingpin. I worked on a Hammerhead. I shortened him. Hammerhead, the initial Hammerhead figure is too tall. They put him on the same body as Kingpin, and it's just not... It doesn't work for Hammerhead. Hammerhead is... In the comics, he's like the same height as Spider-Man. And I went in, I cut off the vest so that I could get the ab crunch going. And I cut the notch in the neck and everything, so he can look up more, because for running positions and such like that. So I've got Hammerhead, and then I decided, because I'm trying to pull just about every single, here's Silvermane, I'm trying to pull just about every single possible, gangster, interesting gangster, right? And I'm trying not to do supervillains. There's certain characters that you could bring into a world setting like this that don't really have any powers, like the Chameleon. The Chameleon, who is intensely important to Spider-Man's history. He's Spider-Man's first villain. He doesn't really have any superpowers. He just, wears masks, essentially. But he shows up in the first issue of Spider-Man, the same issue with the Fantastic Four in it, when Spider-Man first meets the Fantastic Four. And Chameleon is important because he shows the distrust that the city has in Spider-Man. But he's a character you can bring in. No real consequences, right? I have took a Matt Murdock and threw a Jameson head on it. Now, Jameson might be getting some hair. I might be giving him some hair. Now, the reason that Jameson is here and that this is important, though, is because I've also mixed in, ever since I watched No Way Home, I knew how I wanted the next movie to go, and I know that that's not what they're doing. The problem I have now is that the next Spider-Man movie is basically just going to be the finale of Daredevil Born Again, which really bothers me. Because you finally, it took you the entire MCU to take Spider-Man to square one, which is really annoying. He's had his Uncle Ben moment. He understands fully his responsibilities as Spider-Man. He's working part-time jobs, juggling, rent and college and all kinds of stuff. Like that. This is square one for Spider-Man, and Tom Holland only just got there. Up until this point, he's essentially just been a fanboy. We kept waiting for the Uncle Ben moment. We kept waiting for them to be like, oh yeah, well, my uncle died a while back. And they never did. There was one line in What If where he kind of mentions it. But it essentially means that Uncle Ben dying was not a big deal to this version of Spider-Man. That Spider-Man, Tom Holland's Spider-Man, up until this point, was only being Spider-Man because he was inspired by the Avengers, and so he only did good things because he's just a good person. Right? It really bothers me. But my pitch for the next Spider-Man movie has always been bring back Jameson. Jameson was in the last movie. Jameson is poised to be the villain of the next movie, and they're just not going to do it. I know they're not going to do it. And the thing is, J.K. Simmons is a great actor, and he's played several villains. I mean, his Omni-Man performance, even though I don't personally care for the concept behind Invincible, I don't like anything like that. All of those comics, like The Boys and Invincible and stuff like that, a lot of those are made specifically in spite of comics, because they don't like comics, because they want them to be something different. And I disagree wholeheartedly with everything that those comics try to do. But Jameson in No Way Home is like a disgraced podcaster, basically. He's lost the bugle. He's working in like a shoddy apartment in piles of paperwork. He's back at the beginning, which is, kind of where he is in the comics, around there. And Jameson is essentially going to be proven right. Like, he was starting to increase in popularity because of his, constant beratement of Spider-Man. because, after his identity is revealed and everything, it's a huge thing. A lot of stuff is going on, and he's skyrocketing in popularity. Well, after the Sinister Five appear, and Spider-Man, from Jameson's perspective, is possibly working with them. I mean, all he knows is that all of these monsters appeared, Spider-Man is with them, and they, at the time, they killed Spider-Man's aunt. After the memory wipe, like Aunt May was still connected to Spider-Man, because in the previous movie, she was essentially acting like a publicist for him, setting up events where Spider-Man would appear. And so, she would still be connected, but not familial anymore. And Jameson is probably going to pin the murder of Aunt May on Spider-Man going forward, which could even have something like a Captain Stacy effect. And so my pitch was always Jameson getting the Bugle back, using those funds to do the things he did in the early comics. Funding the Spider Slayers. Funding the Scorpion, right? So I got one of those page puncher brainiacs to use as a Spider Slayer, like an ultimate Spider Slayer. But the pitch for the movie, because the MCU likes to mix certain ideas together, the pitch for the movie would be that eventually the Spider Slayer evolves to the point that they can't, advance the tech anymore. And then the idea would be that it's well, obviously we need a human element. Jameson would demand a human be put in the suit, similar to, Iron Man. At the end, he's like, you know what? Robots were never the right choice. We should have done something like Iron Man. The people trust a guy like that. And have Matt Gargan, brought in as the Scorpion. Right? And the thing is, you could even ask Simmons during the movie. It's hey, how much more do you want to play J. Jonah Jameson? If this is his last movie as Jameson, you could kill off the character. He could get his comeuppance. The character's never had his famous monologue, the one where he explains why he hates Spider-Man. You could have a real emotional moment with Jameson. You could even, have it revealed back to Jameson who Peter Parker is again, if you wanted to. If you set up Spider-Man with his temporary, with his part-time job at the Daily Bugle again, you could absolutely do that. And I think taking Spider-Man for the next movie back down to city level, back to street level, would be good. You need to start back there. Again, they're probably just not going to do any of that. Especially since they're getting ready to... after Secret Wars, they're just going to reboot this whole thing anyway, so... But J.K. Simmons, I bet he'd absolutely be up for J. Jonah Jameson taking on a more villainous role and, creating the Spider Slayers, creating the Scorpion, and then regretting it at the end of the movie. But I think that would be a great direction to go in. That's not even all the gangsters either, because here I have... All right, after all those, kind of dirtier, realistic... Here's Fancy Dan! So, back in the 60s, and these characters never really left, Spider-Man used to fight the Enforcers a lot. The Enforcers were just, stereotypical 60s goons. Like the kind of goons that are not really a threat, but they're there. So, the other ones aren't done yet, but I have Fancy Dan, and I decided to keep his coloration because, as a character who's, obsessed with his appearance, that can still make sense in live action. You just put a guy in a purple suit and a yellow hat, and whenever somebody comments on how he looks, you know, he just, like, I don't know, judo chops their neck. Because that's Fancy Dan's thing. He knows kung fu, and that makes him a super threat in the world of gangsters. He knows kung fu. I love how stupid some of the old gangsters were. It's like Spider-Man can lift 20 tons without strain, just normally. That guy knows kung fu. He can take him. You know, but I'm also, you know, I'm building Montana. No longer on the screen. Yeah, Montana, which I am putting in a more realistic, darker suit, because these are both Indiana Jones bodies, and I'm just gonna leave it this color. You know, I'll paint his thing. I've changed his face too. Montana in the original comics didn't have like facial hair or anything, but since his whole thing is he knows how to use a lasso real well. Just again, I mean, you can't say anything. I mean, Hammerhead runs through walls with his face, so he thinks he's a gangster from the 40s. So you can't really say much about it. And then Ox, which is a character that they would have to absolutely change for any kind of MCU related thing. Like if they wanted to bring in Ox, they would have to do something. He's not even in frame either, is he? He's tall. Let's kick some of the other gangsters out of here. Let's put Spider-Man all the way over here. Alright, so, yeah, Montana, Ox. Kick that head out of the way. And Fancy Dan. Yeah, because the original description for these characters, the original like pinup description by Steve Ditko and Stan Lee, Ox is described as simple-minded, like that. Like they describe him as a circus strongman with the mind of a child. I'm like, oh no. Now, I don't think he's like that in the comics anymore. He's just a guy. So, because when I was looking up stuff, and I decided I wanted to go slightly more original with these characters, I'm sculpting in, you know, his yellow sweater, and I'll be doing his black vest and everything. I'm going to keep the tactical pants here from Cable, just for a little bit of some variation on the design. But man, I don't think they'd be able to get away with that. I mean, they could make him dumb, but they couldn't make him, you know, mentally handicapped. And I have a few more I'm working on, because the Enforcers used to be led by the Big Man. Now, the Big Man hasn't been in the comics for quite some time, because he was revealed to have been a reporter that worked for Jameson, trying to control the gang world, the underground, which happens a lot in early Marvel. The gangs were a big deal in New York at the time, and so they're a big deal in the comics. And so there's a lot of characters up until the Kingpin that wanted to basically be the Kingpin. But if you were doing a movie about Jameson, or a series about Jameson, you were involving the gangs, this also works, right? You have the Big Man, who's one of the reporters working for Jameson. Jameson doesn't know that he's in there with the gangs, you know, and that would be another, you know, embarrassment for Jameson and the Bugle. I'm also working on Tombstone, which you can tell once I get his head in there. I keep looking down, and realizing I don't have that much height. You can tell it's the original Tombstone. I've tried to use this for a couple of customs, so I no longer have his jacket. I no longer, had his neck or anything. So I'm trying to rebuild Tombstone using the parts I still had of Tombstone. I do like, because his head and neck are separate now. So I like that. There's a hole in his teeth because I've done a cigar here and there. So he's getting a cigar back. Montana will be getting a cigarette, which they don't do smoking people in movies anymore, but a lot of these characters are supposed to smoke. And with the jacket taken off, because they have a ball joint here, and it's just a big gap in there, and there's a pole going between. So if you cover that gap, you get a ton of range. But yeah, so I'm working on rebuilding my Tombstone. And then, I just finished this one. What's going on your forehead? Clean that back off. I just finished you. Phil Sheldon from the Marvels. He's the photographer / author who wrote about the Marvels. And this is a really important character to have in a Marvel collection, but they've never made him. I highly doubt that they're going to. This is my second attempt, because I was making another one. He's over here on my first appearance shelf. I was making another one. I do like this one a lot more. This one still works. So I might still finish him and just throw him up on eBay. But I like this one a lot more. But he definitely aesthetically fits more with the MCU styled stuff that I'm doing. Let me dig Jameson back out. So this is a J.K. Simmons head. This is the serious head, and this is the yelling head. Tell me that doesn't work. Like that looks almost exactly like Alex Ross's art of Phil Sheldon. And it actually, once I finished this, I actually thought, you know what? You know what I really want? I want a Marvels movie. I want a one-off Marvels, like the Marvels movie. Shot for shot, the same as Busiek and Alex Ross's book. It would be the best Marvel movie that's ever been made. It would be the end-all Marvel movie, right? And because it would be a one-off, it could always stand on its own, be its own thing. You hire a bunch of no-name, lesser-known actors to play all the characters, because you're not asking them to reprise any of these roles or anything. But Simmons has the range to play a character like this, and it would be really interesting to see him, because there's a couple of scenes with J. Jonah Jameson. You hire somebody else for him, and it'd just be interesting to see them interacting. In fact, Simmons even interacts with Parker a couple of times. He actually has a huge distaste in the comic for Peter Parker, actively wishing that Spider-Man would just punch him in the face for taking advantage of him, which is very funny. But this is a man who was there at the beginning of Marvel, at the introduction of the Human Torch, of Namor, of Captain America, who saw the birth of all the Marvels in the 60s and the 70s. This is a man who was a proponent of these characters. Because from the public's view, you don't really know anything about these people. They show up, they do stuff, they destroy things, and then they're gone. Right? And so it's a really important book. It's a really important perspective. And he has a really powerful story to tell. So that that's one of my big pitches for Marvel. Just do the Marvels. just do it. You don't have to change anything. In fact, I don't want you to change anything. Just do it. But yeah, Phil Sheldon rant. I have a couple other Spider-Man related characters. So this one I'm not really happy with at all. So now we get to talk about a failure. So this is actually the second body I've tried for Silver Sable. The first one was, and the arms aren't really going down any. But the only thing I like about this body is the head. I'm trying to make a Silver Sable. I actually have. So I have the little. I have this little bracelet piece for my Spider-Man. And it's the Spider-Verse like communicator. Technically, this is supposed to be the AI assistant for 2099 Spider-Man. I don't remember her name. It's like Layla or something. Which I should know. Spider-Man 2099 is one of my favorite Spider-Man. But the design is obscure enough. It's like she's wearing a coat and stuff. So like you can use that for anyone you say that is. And so I've decided to use that as Silver Sable. I decided that Spider-Man would get contracted towards the end of him being in that world by Silver Sable, and then start to have a distaste for the missions he was getting sent on. He didn't like working for Sable, right before joining the Exiles. But I don't like this body. Before I had it on the AOA Kitty Pryde, and I had painted the whole thing silver, and the silver paint just didn't really work. And I have another one that I can try again. And I was like, well, I have this Valkyrie body. I can try to, do her up more, have more grays and whites, and I don't like anything about this. And you can tell because I haven't even bothered to match up any of the skin tones on this. But I don't like anything about this Silver Sable. I'm really disappointed that I'm, having trouble making her. So, and then, I wanted to do, so one of my favorite things about Spider-Man is, yes, he's got a lot of enemies, but he's also got allies. And they always cut the allies out as well. Just about every movie up until the MCU, they've been doing, like, Spider-Man's the only superhero in the world. And he didn't have allies. And I'm not talking about, like, some of the, like, TV shows where he's got sidekicks or he's got, like, a team. No, I hate that, too. Spider-Man has always been able to handle his problems on his own. But, he has people he can talk to. When it gets too much, he has people he can go to. And the most important people that he goes to are the Fantastic Four and Daredevil. And they always have been. They've always been part of his life. They've always been right there. So, it was very important that I had those characters in this story. You know what? Oh, there she is. So allies were very important. So, yeah, it occurred to me that I had forgotten one of his allies over here, which is like another critical part of this story. Is I got the video game Black Cat. Because she is also intensely important to Spider-Man's story. And I've always been a big fan of Spider-Man and Black Cat. when they originally broke up back in, like, what was that, the 80s? Yeah, it wasn't working for them, and I understand that. But I think it could work now. The problem is Marvel won't let Spider-Man have any relationship. So, but the reason they broke up originally was Black Cat only loved Spider-Man. She didn't love Peter Parker. She didn't want anything to do with his secret identity life. It was boring. She didn't want to settle down. Spider-Man proposed marriage. He was ready to spend the rest of his life with Black Cat, and she rejected it. But over the years, especially the last like decade, Black Cat has grown as a character to a character that I could see actually wanting to do that now. She is friends with Spider-Man and with his Peter Parker persona. She shows up from time to time, and it seems like her life, the way she lives, has been growing tiresome to her. I could see her settling down now. They're never going to do it. Never. They're never going to do that again. But, you know, that's always been... And this is a Spider-Man who's still racked with grief over Gwen Stacy, so, you know, I felt it would be interesting and prudent to throw in a character like Black Cat who shows Spider-Man that, hey, you have other paths forward if you're willing to take them. He's just not willing to take them. Daredevil is another conceptual one. I'm thinking about just getting the born-again Daredevil. I want the colors from She-Hulk. I know a lot of people didn't like She-Hulk. I found it slightly grating and demeaning to certain other characters. But the best thing we got was specifically Daredevil's costume. I love Classic. I love the fact that they found a way to do his yellow suit. So if I got the Born Again Daredevil, I would be painting it in the colors of the She-Hulk show. Doing him in the yellow. And I haven't fully committed to this, but I've also been thinking about doing something ninja related. You know, something based on one of his modern comic costumes. And I changed the glasses. These came from a Wonder Man. To show that it wouldn't be the same Daredevil that we've already got in the MCU. But I've been thinking about doing something like a red and yellow version of like one of his like that modern costume. We just got a figure of it recently, the one with the beard. And he had the hood, and you know, he had the baggy pants. But it's just an idea, you know. This may never come to fruition. If I get the Born Again Daredevil and paint it with the yellow, I'll probably use these heads instead of the, you know, as alternate heads, especially since that one doesn't even come with an unmasked head. They have an unmasked head, they just didn't feel like including it. They're like, no, go back and buy Matt Murdock. Luckily, he's at Ollie's, so I picked up like 5 of them, and I have a bunch more set aside so that I can go back and buy the rest of them. Just because you never know when you need a pinless suit. But then the Fantastic Four. You know what? No, not the Fantastic Four yet. Because I have other characters. So like I got the new Silver Surfer. I haven't went to see the movie yet. I've heard from people that I trust that she's actually one of the better characters in the movie, which is unfortunate to me considering the movie is called The Fantastic Four, not The Silver Surfer. You know, because I've been told, I'm planning on going to see it at some point, but I've been told that The Fantastic Four, while it's one of the better MCU movies that's come out recently, I've been told that the characters are not quite the characters. And there are just certain characters that you don't mess with. You do not mess with. Because it changes everything. It changes the whole dynamic. and they messed with them. So, yeah. I also went back and I picked up a Ronan the Accuser. I'm trying to work on his hood. I want him to actually be able to like turn his head and stuff. This is probably so far a failure. I've reattached the shoulder pads down onto the torso, and then this is all like separate, and I've like segmented the hood and everything. It's not quite working. What I'm probably gonna have to do is get him an entirely new head. This head's a little small anyway, and try again. But I'm gonna add some more like green to him and stuff, make him a little more classic feeling. And then I'm making a Molecule Man. Mostly because I've been sharing my opinion here and there after hearing about the Fantastic Four movie and how important the baby is, Franklin Richards. I'm like, you know what? They're heading to Secret Wars. They're probably going to use Franklin to reset the universe instead of Molecule Man. So the Secret Wars they're apparently adapting is the modern, God Doom story, where Dr. Doom took all the power of like the Beyonders, and he held together what was left of the multiverse on one world controlled by him. So there was a lot of characters that were like all of a sudden villains. And he rewrote all their histories, and there was only a couple of characters that remembered the previous stories. But Molecule Man was one of those characters, because Molecule Man in the comics was revealed to have been a pawn of the Beyonders, an experiment segmented across every reality. And so when the multiverse ended, he got compressed down into a singular being who had led literally billions of lives. But Molecule Man is essentially a god. So, at the end of that storyline, Molecule Man helps to reshape the multiverse with Franklin Richards. Bam, the 616 is back, right? And then the Fantastic Four are written out of the Marvel Universe for a long time. Reed, Sue, Franklin, and Valeria go off with Molecule Man, and they recreate the multiverse, mostly with Franklin using Molecule Man's like different personality, like splitting him back down across the multiverse. But they're probably not going to do that. There's no point in introducing Molecule Man anymore. Like they would have to introduce him. They basically would have had to introduce him as like a goofy character a while back, just to bring back for it to have the same impact. So what they're probably going to do is instead, they're probably going to mix the Heroes Reborn storyline with the ending of Secret Wars, and just have Franklin essentially recreate the multiverse, and depending on how old, like how aged up they make him at the point of Secret Wars, we're probably going to get, because honestly, my suggestion to Marvel is, if you want to make more comic accurate movies, if you want to go back to Marvel's roots, I don't know that they actually want to do that, but it would really, really help sell the idea if it's like, hey, the MCU is over, and it just got recreated by a 10-year-old, so it's going to be more comic booky now. Stop being embarrassed about your source material. I've heard that Superman is very good, and it's because they're not embarrassed by the goofiness of comic books. But, yeah, the Fantastic Four, which I've only waited this long, because I honestly haven't done that much to the figures. I've only waited this long because now I'm going to have to move my camera and drag them over here, because I've currently got them in a thing. Not in the thing. Alright, I'm unclipping. So I have this Fortnite boat. And I position them in here for now. But I've went in. So the goal is not to make them like screen accurate, but I went in and I repainted all the little like metal details and stuff that are supposed to be on the suit that they actually sculpted in, and they just didn't feel like painting. I took a bunch of the hair sculpt out of the inside of her hair so that I could get Sue's head to, you know, move around more. I've already went in to all of them, into the rockers, and I've carved in and made it so they can all bend forward more, which really helps on the thing. The thing like is the one benefiting the most out of that, because when he bends forward, I can get him to touch the top of his the bottom of this section to his belt. But I love the fact that they actually look like they're wearing cloth from the 60s. Like they look like they're, you know, which was the initial idea, right? Like I talked about with my Captain America. Oh, geez, like an hour ago. You know, I talked about the fact that it would be cool if all these characters were designed in a way that it harkened back to the decade they appeared in. I thought that would be kind of cool. And so I've decided to take these ones. Now, I haven't decided if I'm doing anything more. I like the colors. I had thought about, you know, making them black or making them all white and taking out either the black or the white. I thought about, you know, repainting the collar on Mr. Fantastic. I'm not sure if I want to do that yet. Because I'm almost definitely going to get him a lab coat. So, you know, it might actually look better in the lab coat if I don't do the color. And then the thing has feet, and I'm debating because I used the Hot Toys as reference when I was repainting all the little metal pieces. And, so according to the Hot Toys, which is going to be the more accurate reference, right? This black stripe here on the thing's shoe here, like this, all this white here is part of the leg. The boot doesn't start until this black stripe. That is supposed to be the top of the boot, and then the boot, right? This is basically just a fabric material. And they showed the same thing going on with Sue. Under her glove, she has a white stripe on the end of her sleeve. So the Hot Toys doesn't have like alternate feet or anything. I think there's a possibility that the thing's feet are not supposed to be sticking out. That he's supposed to be wearing boots. And I haven't decided, because again, I'm not going for screen accuracy. I'm not trying to replicate the First Steps designs. You know, this is for an alternate universe with my Exiles Spider-Man. These are just going to be my Fantastic Four that hang out with that Spider-Man. And I don't know if I want to do, if I want to do alternate feet, if I want to sculpt over those feet, if I want to just leave it alone. I haven't decided yet. And then I have over here my accessory bin for these guys, because I have the fire Human Torch. I put a magnet in the thing's fist so I can put this on there, so he's got like a shock effect for when he's punching. I took the long-fingered Mr. Fantastic hands and repainted them. And then I took, this is the ball for this is the most recent pram for Grogu. It doesn't replicate the design, but I'm thinking that I can use this as a temporary Franklin Richards carrier, which a lot of people were confused that Sue comes with a gripping hand. If she's going to come later in like a 2 or 3 pack with a Franklin Richards and like a Herbie, then it would make sense that she has the gripping hand, because she'll need to hold the baby carrier. but I don't know that that is in the cards. The Fantastic Four is making a lot of money, and it is being said that it's the best MCU movie since Endgame. So, which, I mean, granted, that's not saying a lot. But, so we might get, another wave of figures. We might get a couple of 2-packs. I'm really hoping that we do. Yeah, but, this is just something I've been working on. And I really like where it's going. And this video has been way too long. So, good night.